Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Thank you. Councillor Enright Miller, which item? Thank you. Any other interest? Alrighty then. I'd like to move to opening remarks then, please. The public meeting is being held by the City Council Planning Advisory Committee, and public notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The non-elected members of the Planning Advisory Committee are Mr. John Baltudis, Mr. Tyler Fenton, Mr. Paul Jennings, and Ms. Sarita Van Dyke. Citizen appointees may ask questions and participate in the discussion in order to assist in making recommendations to City Council, but may not make motions or vote in connection with the public meeting. If a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Planning Committee or City Council before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of City Council or the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Belleville before the related bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add a person or public body as a party. Comments received at this public meeting will be, as well as written comments, will be considered by the Engineering and Development Services Department in the analysis of the applications that were part of the public meeting this evening. For further information on how to provide comments to the city regarding an application from this public meeting, please email planning@belleville.ca. A recommendation report will be brought forward upon receipt of all agency and public comments in the future. Any person wishing to be advised of the Belleville Planning Advisory's recommendations with respect to today's applications are requested to leave their name and address on the appropriate notification sheet located on the clipboards beside the podium. Moving to item number 4.1. Notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment to zoning bylaw number 10245 as amended, 186 John Street, City of Belleville. Owner applicant is Flats Inc. and the agent is Fortran Planning and Design, file number B771191. If I could ask staff to present the application, please.
Thank you, Chair. The property is located on the south side of Bridge Street East, on the west side of John Street. The property is currently zoned residential 4th density zone and is developed with a 5-unit converted dwelling. This application proposes to convert the existing detached garage into one detached accessory dwelling unit and recognize existing zoning deficiencies related to lot size, setbacks, gross floor area, height, and parking location. The official plan designation of this property is residential land use. At this time, staff have received correspondence from one member of the public in opposition of the application.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? If I could just ask you to approach the podium and activate the mic.
Clear throat. Thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Dave Nanton, and I'm a senior planner with Fortran Planning and Design and a registered professional planner, the province of Ontario. I will just be providing a brief presentation on behalf of the applicant for the proposed zoning amendments. Thanks again. Just to provide a little bit of context, and I know we're all from the area, but it helps. So as mentioned by staff, the site is situated in the residential area within the serviced area of Belleville, shown here outlined in yellow. The surrounding area is characterized by residential uses with the downtown core just to the west and the La Vita Bridge Street retirement residence, located west of the site as well. I should learn to use my left hand. The lot area is approximately 1.5 hectares or 0.4 acres for reference. It has frontage onto John Street of approximately 39 meters. As mentioned again, the site is currently developed with a converted dwelling featuring 5 rental units on the site, as well as a 2-story detached garage as existing conditions. The site is also designated residential through the official plan. The current zoning applicable to the site is residential 4th density, which permits the primary use on the property, which is a converted dwelling. What is shown here on this slide is the existing and the proposed lot conditions. We'll speak to the proposed in a moment, but for clarity, the site is currently developed as shown approximately. So that is the existing building in the center of the site featuring the 5 units. And the item at the southwest corner, identified as Coach House, is the current 2-story garage intended to be converted, subject to permission through the zoning bylaw amendment. To review the intent of the application was submitted to rezone the site from residential 4th density to a site-specific residential R4 zone. This is intended to permit the conversion of the existing garage into a coach house as an additional permitted use, and the amendment would also seek relief from various performance standards with respect to lot size, setbacks, the gross floor area and height, and parking location. The rationale of the application is we seek to permit the conversion of an existing structure on the property to accommodate 1 additional residential unit. No anticipated negative impacts to natural features or servicing capacities as a result of the application are planned or intended. The proposed site-specific zone provisions reflect the existing conditions on the site with respect to where the garage is with respect to setbacks from the property boundary. So again, the proposed site-specific reflect those conditions, and only minor site alterations to the property are proposed to accommodate the conversion of the garage. So highlighting that last point, the only conversions that are intended for the property to accommodate the conversion of the garage are interior renovations to the 2-story garage itself into a dwelling, and the accommodation of an additional gravel parking area without the removal of a mature tree. What we see in the center of the property itself is an outline of a green shading, which is the approximate envelope, of the mature tree intended to stay through the alterations of the site, just to extend that gravel parking area to provide a total of 7 on-site parking spaces, which is in accordance with the required zone provisions. Here we've outlined some of the proposed zoning amendment, which is available through the planning rationale as well, subject to staff review and support. Just very briefly, kind of running through the list, we're seeking the additional permitted use of a coach house on a lot containing a converted dwelling, a recognition of the undersized lot area as it exists today, parking to be permitted within the side and front yard, which again are existing conditions on the site, permissions to have a coach house that exceeds the maximum gross floor area marginally from 100 square meters to 112, yard setbacks for the coach house and rear yard setbacks as well as defined here. A coach house to be permitted within a 2-story structure with a maximum height of 7 meters, and human habitation within an accessory structure that is a coach house. In summary, the application we deem to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and to conform with the policies of the official plan. The proposed zoning amendment will permit the conversion of an existing structure to accommodate 1 additional residential unit, and the site-specific zone provisions reflect the existing conditions on the site. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this evening, and if you have questions or comments, I'd be happy to address them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baltutis.
Through the chair. So the building is not being torn down. The building is, the footprint of the building is going to stay, structure it's going to stay, you're just going to renovate the inside of it, correct? That's correct. Okay.
That's correct. Thank you for asking.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Millet.
Thank you. And it proposes 1 dwelling unit, 2-story, correct? In that coach house?
Correct.
So what's the provenance of the historical provenance of the coach house? It appears that it was an ancillary building in the original form to the existing, or the historical home that's now been converted. Is that correct?
I would have to check my notes on the heritage component of the garage
and
to the house.
I recall a situation somewhere further east of here several years ago. And because the coach house had been, or some of the property or all of it had been designated for historical preservation, it became a sticky situation. I'm just wondering, are there any of those? And I guess once we get into the planning, or the department, or staff's approvals, they'll determine that. But it goes back to I can't imagine it does, because it looks like in this one image, it looks as though it's been substantially altered from whatever it looked like before in its original iteration.
Right, and these are great points and questions. What I'm going to be doing is following up.
Okay.
And we'll provide more of a specific about.
Yeah, I just don't, and again, I further to what Mr. Beltutis asked, I'm concerned we're not tearing this down. It doesn't look like much right now, but I mean, historically preserving these structures wherever and whenever we can. Right. In the form that, you know, that it leaves it to complement whatever, you know, some of these historic homes in the area. I think it's an important factor, even though it looks like somebody's stuccoed the bottom half of this thing, so, yeah.
Great.
All right.
There's 2 garage doors, so inside when you go in, there's 2 garage doors.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry,
You're going to have to come to the microphone so that the people who are watching on live stream can hear.
I take it you're the owner?
Part of it.
Okay. Well,
My name's Sean Moore. I'm with Flats Inc.
okay.
So just to clarify your situation, Mr. Millette.
Yep.
That door, that whole thing has been restructured and shored up because the front was kind of giving way.
Okay.
So the previous owner, who was Newman, reinforced and stuccoed that whole thing because he wanted it to stay preserved. So there's 2 garage doors there when you go in that have been kind of filled in, but they're still there. So it was a matter of making sure it didn't fall down.
Okay, yeah, because I can see some mortared
Yeah.
cracks in the brickwork. So,
Yeah, that's what was happening, was he just wanted to make sure it didn't fall apart.
Okay.
So when you're taking these buildings, you want to keep historical,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you want to make sure that it's not falling to pieces like
Oh, yeah,
Catherine Street, like
Yeah.
this weekend, right? You know?
Yeah, I understand that it's got to be structurally sound, but I imagine, again, through the permit process, that'll be looked after. Thanks very much.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none then, a second call for anyone speaking in favor of the application? And for a third time, anyone speaking in favor of the application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application?
Good afternoon. I'm George Hamilton, retired professional engineer, here with my wife Carol Milligan, retired RN, and my son-in-law Ian Morwood, professional engineer. We've owned the property just to the south on at 182 John Street. We've owned it for about 6 years. We also have a house at 192 Williams, where we actually live, and my son-in-law and my daughter live at 186 at the present time and have for a few years now. And we also have a daughter that's on George Street. So we have quite an interest in this neighborhood, and we really enjoy Belleville. And kudos to Thomas Deming in setting up and putting the sign up so in a timely manner so we could see what was proposed, and then going online, it was very user-friendly, and we were able to see, you know, what the presentations were online. And as I said, Thomas has been very cordial in discussing any questions or answering any questions I had, and setting up for today. Ian took some pictures for me, and this is the front view. And sorry, we're new to Belleville, so I don't know anybody here. I apologize on that. But what you're saying is true. But now, can I move this? Sorry, you'll have to show me. Okay. I had it set up with a pointer, but I just want to move to the next slide. Sure. Okay, thank you. Okay, so when you look at the side of this building, you get a different picture, and the boundary line between 186 and 182 is less than a foot between the end of this building, and we're aware that the setbacks for a dwelling structure is 1.2 meters, which is 4 feet plus. So that doesn't meet the existing requirements, and to say it's a conversion, I think is stretching it a bit. We on a regular basis see squirrels, mice crawling up the end of this building, and we can appreciate. We were rental and property owners in Peterborough before we moved here to Belleville, and so we've been through the rental process, and we understand that you should be trying to maximize your profits where possible on this facility. But we are opposed to having that wall stay in its present state, of course, and in that position to our boundary line and not meeting the 1.2 meter setback required for dwelling. Now, you can call it a coach house, but my understanding from reading the proposal is that the electrics, the sewage, and the water are going to be fed from the main house. So in fact, in my world, it's a connected building. I know it's not physically connected with roofs, but the fact that you're taking electricity, hydro, water, and then sewage being, I don't know how they're going to take it back to the street, because the sewage lines are at the street, which is a long way off. Can be pumped there, I guess. But so we're basically strongly opposed to this. But not to be an naysayer, I will suggest what I would do if it was my property to keep me happy as a neighbor, because this is a residential area, or supposed to be, but there are a number of rental units in this area, as there are right across the street from us on William Street. Now, to say the parking is adequate, yeah, potentially is adequate, but we're always seeing cars parked on the east side of John Street in no parking sign areas. Now, they're not necessarily associated with this rental, but just in the neighborhood. And we see the same thing on William Street, cars parked overnight, and so parking is an issue. This slide actually shows how close the building is, and one of our concerns has been for a number of years that the end of this building was going to fall into our property. And my son-in-law has cultivated the raspberries and asparagus and rhubarb and made quite a nice garden on our property, and we're concerned with making sure we don't lose that. And you can see there's the side view along the property, and you can see the privacy fence that's up, and that is on the property line. And then 182 John Street, which is our house, is the one in to the background in the picture. The other thing that we're concerned about is the runoff. If you look at the front picture of the coach house or garage, whatever you want to call it, the eaves troughs come straight down within about 2 feet of our property line, and you can see that there's two exits, one at right angles right onto our property, the ABS, 3-inch ABS coming through the concrete, and the other one going the other way, which is the normal flow of water downhill towards the west. To say in the reading the proposal, and I did question this through Thomas, and where it said there would be no changes to the external structure, it kind of made me laugh, but he clarified that there's no change in the footprint on the building proposed. But if you can look at these pictures and see the building is in, you know, it may be somewhat historical, but it's in pretty bad shape right now. There's a little close-up of the window, and we're surprised with the storms that we've had over the last 2 years. We had to replace the roof on 182. We had 2 major storms in the last 2 years that have taken shingles off all over the city. And being an east-west corridor with an elevated area coming up to the house, it literally ripped shingles off on both those storms that came through. So we've replaced the roof. We were surprised that didn't pull this window out, and because it's in pretty sad shape. This is more of a concern is if you look to the up near the soffit, which a soffit normally has a thickness and closed in. All the roof is old boards. It's not even, well, it might meet code, but it's in a sad state, and it's degraded. I wouldn't want to put new shingles on that roof the way it is. And then if you look about a foot down below the slope line of the roof, you can see where the bricks have already started to fail and are about to fall. I'm not sure because I don't know the structure, internal structure, but a lot of these older buildings were post and beam similar to this construction with double wall brick, but I don't know if it's a single wall brick or double. But it's, you know, it's a concern to us that and we don't stand near it when it's a storm or winds. And I think that's all we have to say, really.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
If I may, Chair, it sounds like if they go forward with their renovations, it's a win-win for you because they're going to fix the building up and it's not going to fall down, right?
Well,
And they can't.
yeah,
they stay on their
it's easy.
footprint,
It's
don't-
easy to say that, but
Well,
at the
they're
same,
gonna do it right.
okay, no, and to finish, we're not to be a naysayer. My suggestion as a professional engineer who's worked on a number of buildings, commercial and private, over 40 years. What I would do to be in compliance and meet the 1.2 meters is I would go inside that building because there's not much to it inside. And I would build a new structural wall in about 3 feet so that I would be within the 1.2 meters boundary that's required as at present. And then I would very carefully take the other part down and site preparation is our concern. It needs to have like a plywood fence put in on our boundary so we don't have things dropping onto our property. And then everybody'd be happy. And yes, to your point, it would make it a safer location. And you'd have, like, basically, from an engineering point of view, structurally, you can see you don't have to be an engineer to look at the end of that building to know that there's a concern on it. And it's going to have to be reworked anyway. So if you took 2 or 3 feet off the building for a single dwelling, it's not going to hurt very much, and it's not going to devalue the rental property value of it at all.
And I can't comment on how they're going to do it because I haven't seen.
No, I
the
can't
drawings
either, but I'm just all.
Until we see the drawings, it's hard to say what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And that'll be covered through the building
Yeah.
code and through our building.
I just don't want to
department.
be a naysayer as a previous owner of rental property, but, you know, I'm looking for, you know, when I complain about something, I try to give you a solution at the same time.
Thank you, Caleb. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application?
Carol, do you want to just? The other concern was, just that we did send a formal concern into Thomas, and he's confirmed that. So we're not bypassing the appeal process. So, Thomas, if you could just confirm that you have that in writing.
Yes, through the chair, and I believe the whole committee was circulated that as well prior to the meeting.
Thank you.
I guess one of the concerns I have is that for us, there will be very little privacy in our backyard. With a window overlooking just a foot from our property line, the privacy will be all gone. And we did not anticipate that when we bought the property. And also I'm concerned because that property itself is not very well maintained. And I'm concerned that it will continue to be that in an even larger area. So those are a couple of my concerns. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none for a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, the resolution reads that the Flats Inc. application B 77-1191 be referred to the regular Planning Advisory Committee meeting for consideration. Have a mover, thank you, Tyler, and a seconder. Thank you, Sean. What's your name, Sean? Kelly? All those in favor, please. Thank you. And I'm just going to let Councillor Miller back in. Thank you. Item number 4.2, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to zoning bylaw number 10245 as amended, 3 Highview Crescent, City of Belleville. The owner is Yolande Lamoth and Kenneth Welburn. I apologize if I didn't quite pronounce that correctly. Applicant is Travis Royal. Agent is Q&E Engineering, Inc., and the file number is B771192. Staff could give us an update on the application, please?
Certainly. So the property is located south of Jackson Avenue on the east side of Highview Crescent. And the property is also zoned residential second density zone and was previously developed with a single detached dwelling. Consent application B323 was approved by the Committee of Adjustment on April 20th, 2023, granting severance subject to a rezoning of the property to an appropriate zone. This application proposes to rezone the property from a residential third density zone with special provisions to facilitate the development of the proposed semi-detached dwelling. The official plan designation of the property is residential land use. And at this time, staff have received correspondence from 2 members of the public in opposition to this application. Back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application? Welcome, and your mic's already activated.
Thank you. Hi, Travis Royal. This is still a picture of the coach house. How do I get to the other one? Yeah, there we go. So we're proposing to do a semi-detached dwelling, 2 stories, double car garage on each side. The coloring is probably going to change, but this is what I've come up with so far. This is just 3D renderings of what we're looking at. Do I just hit the space bar? There we go. So this is the top floor. The top floor is going to house 3 bedrooms, an ensuite bathroom, a laundry room, and a Jack and Jill bathroom for the other 2 bedrooms. And then same on the other side. It's going to have an open foyer when you walk in, so it'll be like open concept when you come into the unit. Each side. Here's another look at it. We're still waiting on Watson's to get an elevation where I would be able to show the sides and stuff, but we don't know the elevation yet. Here's a picture of the main floor. So when you walk in on the right-hand side, there will be a mud room. Can we see my mouse? Yeah, we can. So on this side, there's like a mud room over here with a powder room, double car garage, and then you'll have an open concept great room.
Beautiful blue spruce at the back. The
Yeah.
front one is a huge spruce. And even with a concept drawing, with this drawing, I can't see how both of those trees you're going to keep.
I think we're going to have to lose the one at the front.
Well, that's where I don't like to hear that. you know.
Me either.
So I'm not sure if the department has any control over that or not, but, so, I don't know.
Do you
Is
ha-
that
do you
part of
ha-
the design?
Sorry, do you have a question there, John?
Oh, my question, I'm sorry, yes, you're right. I guess I got off track there, was about keeping the trees.
Yeah, so our hope is we'll keep as many as we can. I don't want to take any down if I didn't have the choice, but I think with where the driveways would be positioned, I think we may lose the one. We're not going to move the driveway on the right, so the one on the right-hand side, we shouldn't have to move that one. So my hope is that maybe we can keep a tree that's right there, because it would be nice to keep it there if we can.
Thank you,
But
yeah.
the driveway on the left side, there's some trees on the left side of the lot where I think we're going to lose some of those. And then again, without the elevation plan, we're not entirely sure where it's going to sit. My hope is that we can keep that tree at the back too.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Earl.
Thank you.
For a second time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? And a third time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Thank you. If you could approach the podium.
Basically, I have some questions about it. How close is it going to be to the house on either side of it? Because that's a pretty big building. And I live around the corner from it. And
Thank you.
There-
Could you state your name for the record?
Oh,
This
I'm
is
sorry.
being live streamed.
George Gilchrist. I live at 110 Jackson Avenue. And I walk my dog around there. There was a house there, a single-family dwelling. There was no fence. But I see a fence has been built on the south side of the property now. So if it's going to be right up tight against that fence, I'm sorry. If it's going to be tight against the house next to it on the north side, I don't think that should be allowed either. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any questions for this gentleman? Thank you. Councillor Alsop?
Yes, Chair. I just wanted to note that I do have what is being proposed in the development as far as offsets. I'd be happy to give that to you if you wanted to take a look.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application?
Oops.
And if you could just state your name, please.
Yes, my name is Patrick Ramp, and I live in Jackson Woods, just very close to this house. We walk around all the time. It's a great neighborhood. I put in opposition against the application in writing earlier, and just going to go through some of the highlights that I mentioned about being against the application. One is the large size. It's quite massive. It's 60 feet wide by 60 feet deep. And originally when you look at the drawing, you look at the proposal, that's almost 7,000 square feet of dwelling plus basement. And most houses around there are around 1,500 square feet. Lucky if you've got 2,000 square feet around there, and they've got their single-family homes. Everything else is R2. In the entire neighborhood, nothing has been redesignated as R3 or anything close to it. It's a beautiful neighborhood, and I just think 6,960 square feet is what I was calculating. If you look at this drawing here up there, that's what you get for square footage. So you've got two semis at 3,500 square feet. They're quite big, and the depth is 60 feet. And if you walk on that property, 60 feet takes you to the edge of the hill, which starts going down into the park. And so when you look at that, you've got no backyard anymore. So my concern is, especially for the two neighbors on either side, if I was in either backyards, I'd be looking at a wall completely. Because where you see the property end is really where the hill starts starting to go down towards the park. So 60 feet is just very deep construction, and I just don't think the neighborhood, the traditional neighborhood, is used to that size. It's like an apartment building, actually. I would be looking at an apartment building if I was a neighbor, and it's deep. So the large size is a concern. The other concern to me was when you looked at the original, it didn't have a garage, didn't state any garage, it just had the two driveways. And to me, it seemed like it would be used for a rental more than someone buying two semis. I mean, I don't see the market for luxury 3,500 square foot semi in that neighborhood. I'm just guessing that it could possibly be used for rental. And if it was a rental and you saw that there was no garage in the original proposal, you'd end up having 4 or 5 cars on each driveway. And you could possibly have 10 renters in each side because you've got a basement to develop as well. And it looked like you could have bedrooms on each floor. So my concern was that it's not for residential, it's for rental. So I kind of question that. I also just don't think it fits the property values in the neighborhood. I think property values will go down because I wouldn't want to be, if I lived right next to it, I don't think your house would be worth as much having a monstrosity of 60 foot by 60 foot right next to you when everything else in the neighborhood have these beautiful backyards, and this one has no backyard, basically. It looks like it does, because if you look at the lot size, it looks very big, but that's all treed, and that all goes downhill to the park. So anyways, I just thought with so many people that could be occupying that rental unit, because I think that's what it was going to be, that, you know, you've got that park, that new park, Jackson Woods Park, just on the back of that, and that could just, I don't know, it just could cause a bit of a nightmare, depending on what its purpose is. Is it really going to be for, you know, a family on each side, or is it going to be for renters? That's a big concern of mine. But the biggest concern is the large size. It's 60 feet deep, which really takes up all usable backyard, and there's no backyard. There's no flat space left for anybody who's enjoying those two.
Yeah, in your presentation, speaking in opposition, you mentioned you live nearby. You said you're not a resident of one of the adjacent properties.
I'm not a neighbor directly adjacent to one of the to this dwelling. No, I'm in Jackson Woods. I'm on 10 Hazel Court, so I'm just down the hill from them.
So roughly, how far are you from this then?
Oh God, I don't think I would even be 400 meters away.
Okay, so, you know, you're almost a half a kilometer away from this property, but you're concerned that the aesthetics of it might be such that it's not going to be, my concern at first, I thought you were a neighbor, but you're speaking of the neighborhood.
My concern is for the two adjacent neighbors
Okay.
as well. I wouldn't
Yeah,
want to live there.
that's fine.
My
Okay.
property value would go down with this.
Yep, that's
house
fine,
next to it.
and I understand that. Now, my other question is, you said that while the state attached 2 dwelling units, that you suspect that this will become a rooming house of some sort.
I don't know.
I know.
I'm guessing
That's my question is,
I don't-
do you have any knowledge that this is somehow in the works?
To me, it doesn't make sense, okay?
But,
From a real estate,
My question is, do you know if that is in fact in the works?
how would I know that?
Okay, so you don't know that?
I don't know
Okay,
that.
thanks. That's all I have.
Any other questions? If I could just direct to staff, because in reading this, it's a zoning application in terms of changing it to allow from a single dwelling to a semi-detached or duplex dwelling. Are the lot coverage areas different for this particular application?
Through you, Madam Chair, the R3 zone itself, the only difference between it and the R2 zone is one, it allows for a semi-detached dwelling. It also does have an increased lot coverage. The R2 is 35% and the R3 is 45%. However, just as they aren't proposing to amend the R3 except for a lot line technical amendment that staff requested as part of that application. So they would be working within the existing R3 zone. And if you refer to the drawing on there, they're not actually using the full lot coverage that is available to them under that zone.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I know it's, I saw that, it's kind of, may I speak again? Is that okay? If you look at, I saw the same thing, and it says, oh, look, there is a potential to be even larger for the R3. Unless you're going downhill, and that's a steep hill, could you actually use that space? So it's impossible to even use that additional proposal. I get that they put it there just to show that, oh, we didn't use up the whole thing. But it would be impossible on this lot anyways, just because you'd be going right down the hill. So anyways, it's just too big. Just too big. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there anyone, done it 2 or 3, Katie? That was 2. And for a third and final time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, then the resolution is that the Lamothe and Welborn application B77 1192 be referred to the regular Planning Advisory Committee meeting for consideration. May I have a mover? Thank you, Tyler. Councillor Millette. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question then, please. Thank you. The motion's carried. Item 4.3, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment to zoning bylaw number 10245 as amended, 270 Church Street, City of Belleville. The owner applicant is Gordana Vranek Vasilevich. Agent is RFA Planning, Inc., and file number is B771193. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application? Oh, I'm sorry, staff. Staff, you can present the application.
Sure thing, Madam Chair. The property is located on the south side of is located south of Station Street and north of Victoria Avenue on the west side of Church Street. The property is currently zoned general commercial zone and was previously developed with a personal service shop, a retail store, and at one point there was also a dwelling unit there. In 2002, the applicant inquired about a short-term accommodation license for a dwelling unit. The city indicated that the proposed use was not compliant with the zoning bylaw. Upon further review, staff determined that there were 3 units on the property that were created without a building permit or zoning compliance. This application proposes to rezone the property to a site-specific residential 4th density zone to permit a single detached dwelling with 2 accessory dwelling units. Special provisions are included in the proposal to recognize the existing built form, including minimum front yard depth, maximum lot coverage, and minimum accessory building setback from side and rear lot lines. The official plan designation of this property is City Center, and at this time, staff have not received any correspondence from members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application?
Good evening, committee members. My name is Catherine Tran, a planner at RFA Planning Consultants, the agent on file, and I have a brief presentation. And this is to introduce you to the rezoning application at 270 Church Street. To provide some site context, the site has a lot area of 515.38 square meters, and it's located within the Belleville Urban Service area. The site does have approximately 12 meters of frontage on Church Street, and surrounding the property there are commercial uses to the south and west. To the north is the St. Michael's Archangels Catholic Church, and to the east is the St. Michael's Catholic School. The site consists of a detached building where it was formerly used for a day spa and a retail store, and currently 3 residential units exist. To go over the work that was initiated, a pre-consultation meeting was held with municipal staff on November 10th, 2022, with the rezoning application filed on May 8th, 2023. And in support of this rezoning application, a planning rationale, site plan, and floor plans were submitted as well. To go over the provincial policy statement, the lands are within the Belleville Urban Service Area where growth and development is focused. The site is designated city center under the Belleville official plan, where a mix of densities and a variety of public uses are in proximity to the site, and overall the rezoning application is consistent with the 2020 PPS. As I mentioned, under the City of Belleville official plan, the lands are designated city center, and under the city center designation, it does permit low-density residential uses. So no official plan amendment is requested in support of this change of use. Overall, the rezoning application conforms with the city center policies of the official plan. To go over the rezoning application, currently the site is zoned general commercial C2 zone, and it's proposed to be rezoned to a site-specific urban fourth density R4-XX zone with special provisions. And the special provisions will recognize the existing front yard depth, lot coverage, and accessory building setbacks to the interior and side lot line, rear lot line, sorry. These provisions that are requested are based on the existing built form, and no changes to the existing built form are proposed through this application. The rezoning application will permit residential uses on site and allow for the owners to proceed with the registration of 2 accessory dwelling units subsequent to the rezoning approval. And through the registration of the 2 ADUs, the applicable zoning regulations is based off of a single detached dwelling. To summarize the application, the rezoning application proposes to convert the existing building for residential uses consisting of 1 single detached dwelling and 2 ADUs. The subject property is requested to be zoned from general commercial C2 zone to a urban residential fourth density R4 zone with special provisions. And overall, the conversion of the subject property into a residential use will allow for the owners to register for 2 ADUs, which will contribute in providing more housing to meet the needs of current and future residents. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Tran? Thank you, Councilor Millette.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Am I to understand then that the owner, and in reading all the reports, the owner had already built additional dwelling units created without building permits or compliance with the zoning bylaw, with a mind to, at the time, have STA, short-term accommodation units there?
It was an inquiry, but nothing has transpired.
Okay, so those existing, what I'm reading here, additional dwelling units that were created, they're already there. What we're doing is rezoning after the fact kind of thing to
Yes, it's a cleanup.
clean up what was done wrong out of compliance the first time.
Yes.
Okay then, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. Councillor Alsop?
Just to follow up on my colleague, Councillor Millet's point, a question to staff. Were there any fines or penalties associated with that, or how, from a processes and procedure standpoint, do you move forward with that, given that some of these have already been built?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Alsop and the committee. In some circumstances, bylaw enforcement can go out to certain situations like this and, to help stop the use. Other times we do try to work with property owners to rectify the situation. In this situation, immediately we did identify that there was no building permits for these uses. The STA application was not approved, obviously. What we did suggest was that a rezoning application would rectify the zoning compliance issue. What we've also identified to them as well is that a part of any zoning approval will be a hold symbol on the use to require building permits. So any dwellings that have been added will have to go through that building permit process. So at least from our perspective, we can ensure that they are safe dwelling units.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in support of the application?
Hi, my name is Yakov Sobolev. I'm Gordana's son-in-law. Just wanted to add for context for the committee purpose that years ago, Gordana's been the owner of the building for close to 20 years, and her daughter grew up in Belleville. And years ago, when we moved out to Belleville with our family, there was a need for, to host us and kids in the house. Now, just for context purposes, while at that time no building permits were pulled in order to do construction, Gordana did hire contractors in order to facilitate the construction of these units. And at this point, of course, it is, too late we are going backwards, but, Gordana is going to be more than willing to work with the city and the, appropriate departments in order to go through the, compliance with the building and fire codes as soon as possible. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, then for a third time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? And for a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Thank you. Then the resolution reads, I apologize, Gordana, that the Vranek Vasilovich application B77-1193 be referred to the regular Planning Advisory Committee meeting for consideration. A mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Enright Miller. All in favor? Thank you. The motion's carried. Moving on to item number 4.4, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment to zoning bylaw number 10245 as amended. 228 Dundas Street East, City of Belleville. Owner applicant is Metamore Inc. The agent is Watson Land Surveyors. File number is B771194. Staff, if you could provide a presentation.
Certainly, Madam Chair. So this property is located on the northeast corner of Dundas Street East and Bleecker Avenue. However, this application is specifically in regards to the portion of the property fronting onto Bleecker Avenue. The property is currently zoned nursing home NH-4 zone, residential second density R2-3 zone, and residential second density R2-18 zone. So that's 2 residential second density exception zones. The nursing home zone was recently amended to remove age restrictions for the special care residential building. This application proposes no changes to that zone or use. A consent application was recently submitted to the city to propose severance of the northern half of the property containing the residential zones from the southern half containing the special care residential building. The R2-18 zone was created in 2002 to provide additional parking for the special care residential building, which is no longer required. The R2-3 zone is the most prevalent zone in this area and extends the full length of Bleecker Avenue between Bridge Street East and Dundas Street East. This application proposes to rezone the R2-18 zone to R2-3 zone, which will ensure that the severed lot cannot be used for a parking lot once it is no longer affiliated with the special care residential building. The official plan designation of this property is entirely residential land use, and at this time, staff, at the time of writing this, staff had not received any correspondence, but we did receive an email from one resident with questions about the application.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? If you could come to the podium, please. Could I ask you to activate your mic so that they can hear you online.
Good evening. My name is Michael Kroc. I live at 145 Bleecker Avenue. I understand you've received a copy of my correspondence. Very good. Mr. Deming, thank you for your reply. I am in favor of this. My wife was surprised to hear that. Because it will change the use of that property from a parking lot to residential use. My question is, in your reply, you mentioned a single unit. Could that unit be a 3-story apartment building?
The proposal is to rezone it to the R2-3 zone, which would permit a single detached dwelling. Of course, there are recent provincial legislation changes that require municipalities to permit up to 2 accessory dwelling units in all single detached dwellings.
Okay.
However, the main use under the R2-3, the only one that's residential, is a single detached dwelling. So no, it could not be an apartment building. The R2-3 is the same zoning that affects that whole street.
Okay, so it could be a duplex.
Duplex is not a permitted use. It could be a single detached dwelling with an accessory dwelling unit, and I understand that can be extremely confusing. However, there are provisions within our bylaw that restrict how those accessory dwelling units unfold. And the goal of them is to maintain that the single detached dwelling is the primary use of the property still.
Okay, all right, thank you for that clarification. Maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but going forward, this will be approved. In 2018, there was a similar application made for the severance, and it was approved with notes, one being that the owner maintain the existing green space and mature trees. And as mentioned in my note, the northern portion of this property is referred to specifically in the bylaw. Too much paper. I think I made mention of it in my note. 2002-182-19. It makes specific reference to the northern portion maintained as a landscaped area. So, as I said, putting the cart before the horse here, but I would like to see mention of that in the approval given to the severance so that it will be there. I don't want that getting lost, because at some point in the future, somebody's going to want to develop something there. And if this isn't kept going as we're moving forward, oh, well, that wasn't brought up, that was never maintained, is my concern with that. As I mentioned, there had been an attempt to expand the parking lot at one point. A number of trees were removed. Fill was brought in, and there was a remediation process after that. So my only thing about this is to have mention of that northern parcel being maintained as part of the approval process. Thank you.
So may I ask a question of staff, just for clarification? Again, this is a zoning application to change the R2-18 to an R2-3 at this stage. Is my understanding correct that the severance portion goes to Committee of Adjustment, would not be dealt with here?
Yes, Madam Chair. The Committee of Adjustment recently approved the severance on the condition of this rezoning. So the northern half, kind of marked out there, that was approved for the severance application at that time.
Mr. Kroc, I just wanted to ensure that there was clarity around the fact that the severance has already occurred.
Yes, but now that came from the Committee of Adjustment. My understanding is the Planning Committee has to make a recommendation to approve that severance, and then it goes to Council. Is that not right?
So when the Committee of Adjustment makes a recommendation to approve a consent application, they can attach conditions to that application. In this circumstance, one of those conditions for that approval is the rezoning of this property. So the property owner has, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Pynchon, 2 years to complete it. So this process itself and approval of the rezoning does affect the approval of that consent application. So it's just the staged approach.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Demme.
The other thing would be that if this is no longer going to be used as a parking lot, I would suggest that the owner be obliged to put up some kind of a chain at the entranceway, because people use it as a parking lot on a regular basis.
Thank you. You concluded?
Yep, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Crock? Seeing none, then if I could call, is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application?
Good evening, Jennifer Matthews from Watson Land Surveyors. We're the agent on file for this application, and I'm just happy to answer any questions. I think it's all been discussed, but if there is any, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions on the application? I think you got off easy tonight, so thank you. And third and final time, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, anyone wish to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? And for a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, then the resolution reads that the Metamore Inc. application B77-1194 be referred to the regular Planning Advisory Committee meeting for consideration. Thank you, Councillor Enright Miller. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. All in favor? Thank you. The motion's carried. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Alsop and Councillor Millette, thank you. The meeting is adjourned.